The creature roared, a sound that vibrated the very metal of the observation deck. But 6-year-old Joshua just giggled, holding out another piece of candied synth kelp. The Draconis High Command watched, speechless, as the Xyler, the apex predator of Xylos, nudged the offering from the child's palm with its massive, scaled head. "Impossible," Zara hissed, her reptilian eyes narrowed. The observation platform, sealed and reinforced with plasteel, hummed with nearly unleashed energy. Below, in the Xyler's enclosure, a jagged canyon carved into the Xylos rocked the beast. All 20 meters of it lowered its head again, expectant. "That creature has killed hundreds of our colonists, torn apart armored vehicles. It's untamable." Joshua offered another piece of the shimmering green synth kelp. "He's just hungry, Miss Zara, and maybe a little lonely." Zara's mandibles clicked softly, a sign of rising disbelief. Lonely. The Xyler was a force of nature, pure aggression given form. She remembered the reports, the mangled remains, the terrified screams echoing across the comms channels. A flicker of memory, unbidden. A small, furry creature, one of the Xylos rodents caught in a coil of razor vine. Its leg was broken, its eyes wide with terror. Joshua, barely tall enough to reach it, had gently unwound the vine, his small hands surprisingly deft. He'd hummed a tuneless melody, and the rodent, instead of biting, had nuzzled his palm. The Xyler exhibits unusual calmness in the child's presence. A Draconis scientist, his voice a low rumble, broke the silence. He adjusted the focus on his datapad. Brainwave activity suggests a significant reduction in aggression, almost placid. Xylos, a world of perpetual twilight, choked by crimson dust and razor-edged flora, a planet where the very air tasted of metal and ozone. The Draconis colony, a cluster of prefabricated domes clinging precariously to a mesa, was a constant struggle against attrition. Resources were stretched thin, the environment unforgiving, and the Xyler was its apex nightmare. Zara, pragmatic and driven, had dedicated her life to the colony's survival. As High Commander, the responsibility for every life rested on her scaled shoulders. The Xyler represented an existential threat, a constant drain on their already limited resources. Now this human child was strolling around, feeding it candy. Another member of the High Command, a hulking Draconis male named Vorlag, shifted uneasily. "Commander, with all due respect, this is madness. The child is in danger. We can't risk the Xyler turning on him." Zara ignored him. "Joshua," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "how are you able to approach the Xyler? What do you do?" Joshua shrugged, his eyes never leaving the creature. "I just understand him, Miss Zara. He's sad sometimes, and his teeth itch." The Draconis relied on technology, on atmospheric processors, hydroponic farms, and energy shields to carve out a niche on Xylos. Joshua, on the other hand, seemed to possess an innate connection to the planet itself, a resonance that defied logic. Zara frowned. Reports of increased Xyler attacks on mining outposts had been escalating in recent weeks. Something was disturbing the creature, driving it to greater violence. Could it be connected to the Draconis Strip mining operations further north? Perhaps, another voice, this one filled with a chilling ambition, cut through Zara's thoughts. It was Counselor Rorgeth, his eyes gleaming with undisguised calculation. Perhaps this connection could be weaponized. Imagine the possibilities, Commander. A controlled Xyler. We could secure the mining routes, defend the colony. Zara's mandibles tightened. The very idea made her scales crawl. Absolutely not, Counselor. The child's safety is paramount. But the seed of an idea, a dark and dangerous possibility, had been planted. Zara made her decision. "I'm overruling all members of the Draconis High Command. I will personally investigate Joshua's ability and the Xyler's behavior. Prepare a series of observations and tests. I want to know everything." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the assembled Draconis. "And that is an order." Zara watched, her stylus dancing across the datapad, recording every minute shift in the Xyler's massive frame. The creature, which had moments before been thrashing against the reinforced durasteel of its enclosure in a display of raw, untamed fury, now lay placidly, its reptilian eye half closed, as Joshua stroked its snout. His small hand, seemingly insignificant against the Xyler's armored hide, moved with a confidence that defied logic, a soothing rhythm that calmed the beast as surely as any tranquilizer dart. She scrolled through the historical logs, the sterile white text a stark contrast to the vibrant green of the Xyler's scales visible through the observation window. Decades of research, countless attempts at communication, all ending in either violent rejection or indifferent apathy. No Draconis, not even the most seasoned handlers, had ever elicited this kind of docility. The reports were filled with incidents of aggression, territorial displays, and outright attacks. Yet here was a 6-year-old human effectively taming it. The airlock hissed open and Joshua bounded in, clutching something green in his hand. "Zara, Xyler wants this," he announced, holding out a leafy plant with thick, fleshy leaves. "He says it tastes like sparkly water." Zara raised a skeptical ridge of scales above her eyes. "Sparkly water, Joshua, that's unlikely." She took the plant, its texture strangely cool and slick against her claw. "I'll have it analyzed." The results from the biolab were back within the hour. The plant, indigenous to a remote region of Xylos's western hemisphere, was exceptionally rich in xylite 7, a rare mineral essential for regulating the Xyler's complex digestive system. A mineral almost entirely absent from their current synthesized diet. Zara re-examined the data, a knot forming in her stomach. How could Joshua have known? Over the next few weeks, Zara orchestrated a series of carefully controlled experiments. She adjusted the Xyler's diet, modified its enclosure environment, even introduced different olfactory stimuli. Through it all, Joshua remained the constant variable, a baseline against which she measured the creature's reactions. The results were undeniable. The Xyler's health indicators improved dramatically with the addition of the xylite 7-rich plant. Its energy levels increased, its scales regained their vibrant sheen, and its overall disposition shifted from sullen indifference to something approaching contentment. One experiment involved temporarily separating Joshua from the Xyler. The moment Joshua was led away, the Xyler rose to its full, terrifying height, pacing the perimeter of its enclosure. A low, guttural rumble emanated from its chest, vibrating through the observation deck. The Draconis scientists, their faces pale, muttered about agitation, territoriality, the inherent danger of the creature. Zara focused on the vocalizations, her internal processors filtering out the fear and focusing on the data. There was a pattern, a distinct rhythm to the rumble. She grabbed a recording device, amplifying the sound. Joshua, confined to a separate observation room, pressed his small hands against the glass, his face etched with worry. As the Xyler's rumbling intensified, Joshua began to hum, a soft, almost imperceptible melody. He swayed slightly, his eyes closed as if listening to something only he could hear. Then he began to mimic the Xyler's vocalizations, his voice a child's imitation of a prehistoric roar. Zara, stunned, ordered the recording device to analyze the frequency patterns. The results were impossible. Infrasonic patterns, complex and nuanced, layered beneath the audible rumbles. A form of communication beyond the range of Draconis hearing. Driven by a surge of scientific curiosity, Zara designed a device to amplify and translate the infrasound. A complex array of sensors and processors, calibrated to the Xyler's specific vocal range. The testing phase was fraught with technical difficulties, feedback loops, and near-catastrophic energy surges. But finally, it was ready. As the device powered up, bathing the observation deck in a low hum, Joshua flinched. He clutched his head, his face contorted in pain, "Stop it," he cried, his voice strained. "It's too loud, I can hear him." Zara's scales prickled with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Hear him? What is he saying, Joshua?" Joshua took a shaky breath, his eyes wide and unfocused. He feels itchy and thirsty. He wants the shiny rocks." Zara cross-referenced Joshua's descriptions with geological surveys of xylos. "Shiny rocks, you mean crystals?" Joshua shook his head. "No, not crystals, big rocks under the ground," he says. "They make the water taste better." Zara's mind raced. He's referring to a specific mineral deposit. Joshua pointed to a holographic map of xylos, his finger landing on a region marked as a Draconis mining zone. "There. He wants the rocks from there. A location rich in a different mineral, one that the Draconis had been extracting for years, unknowingly disrupting the delicate balance of the ecosystem." Zara felt a chill crawl down her spine. Joshua's ability, however extraordinary, was becoming increasingly concerning. The implications were staggering. She compiled her findings, meticulously documenting every observation, every experiment, every translated vocalization. The report was lengthy, detailed, and utterly unbelievable. She presented it to the Draconis High Command, bracing herself for ridicule. The reaction was mixed. Some dismissed her findings as fanciful, the product of human sentimentality and flawed methodology. Others, however, saw an opportunity. "The boy," High Commander Volkov said, his voice a low growl. "He can locate resources, valuable resources. Xylos is rich in rare minerals. We could use him." Zara bristled. "He's a child, Volkov. And this is about understanding the Xyler, not exploiting it." Volkov dismissed her concerns with a flick of his wrist. "Sentimentality, a weakness. We will analyze the boy's brain patterns, map his cognitive processes, understand how he communicates. Then we will use that knowledge to our advantage." Back in her lab, Zara accessed Volkov's secure communication channel. A coded message flashed across the screen. "Initiate Project Chimera. Separate the human from the Xyler. Commence neural mapping, Sub-Level 4. Zara's blood ran cold. Sub-Level 4. That was the experimental vivisection lab, the one they used for procedures deemed too unethical for standard research protocols. She knew with chilling certainty that Volkov intended to dissect Joshua's mind, to tear apart the very fabric of his connection with the Xyler. She had to get Joshua out now. The datapad chimed, displaying official Draconis High Command directives. Zara's scaled fingers tightened around it. Transfer Order 729 Omega. Subject Joshua Baker to be relocated to Research Facility Gamma 9 for intensive study. Immediate effect. The words seemed to burn into her retina, separate from Xyler. Her blood ran cold. Zara tapped a comm link, her voice low and urgent. "Krell, this is Zara. I need a discreet channel, now." A moment later, a familiar Draconis voice crackled in her ear. "Zara. What is it? I'm in the middle of shift rotation. I need a way to move too. Assets, discreetly, think off-grid, can you manage that?" Krell paused. "Assets as in living, Zara, you know the risks." "I do. Meet me at Sector 4, Access Tunnel Bravo. Code phrase, the sky weeps emeralds." Zara strode into the High Command member's office, the metallic tang of anxiety coating her tongue. Counselor Varkos sat behind his obsidian desk, his reptilian eyes cold and assessing. "Counselor," Zara began, her voice carefully neutral, "regarding Transfer Order 729 Omega. I believe it requires further review. The potential ramifications of separating the human from the Xyler." Varkos cut her off with a dismissive wave of his clawed hand. "Your objections are noted, Captain Zara. However, the High Command has made its decision. My decision. The matter is closed. The humans' unique abilities are of paramount interest. Your attachment to the creature is clouding your judgment." His gaze intensified. "Consider this a direct order, Captain. See it done." Zara's internal organs twisted, outranked. She had precious little time. She hurried back to the observation deck, her mind racing. Krell would need at least an hour. She had to buy them that. "Security Chief," she barked into her comm, "initiate a full system diagnostic on Observation Deck 7. I suspect energy fluctuations. Top priority." A flurry of confused acknowledgments followed. That would slow them down, at least temporarily. Under the guise of a routine inspection, Zara led Joshua and the Xyler towards a less-used transport tunnel. The Xyler, usually placid, shifted uneasily, its massive head weaving back and forth. The air hummed with a barely perceptible tension. At the remote outpost, a small, Spartan room overlooking a secluded valley on Xylos, Zara knelt before Joshua, her expression grave. "Joshua, they want to take you away, study you, separate you from Xyler. We can't let that happen." She gripped his small shoulders. "We need to understand what's happening, and we need to do it together. Can you feel what Xyler feels?" Joshua closed his eyes, his brow furrowed in concentration. "He's sad and scared, but it's more than that, Zara. It's like the land is sick. Something's wrong with Xylos itself. Not just hunger, but something deeper." Zara accessed the Draconis sensor network, calling up planetary scans, atmospheric readings, geological surveys. She focused on the region Joshua had described, a swathe of iridescent jungle bordering the Crystal Sea. Anomalies flickered on the screen, subtle energy spikes, unusual mineral concentrations, localized temperature fluctuations. Something was definitely amiss. Digging deeper, Zara unearthed restricted reports, mining permits, and resource allocation schedules. A specific region, corresponding precisely with the anomalies in Joshua's description, showed a tenfold increase in mining activity authorized by Counselor Varkos, the same counselor who had dismissed her concerns. The mining operations were in direct violation of established ecological guidelines. Joshua sat cross-legged on the floor, a small infrasound emitter clutched in his hands. He pressed it against the Xyler's scaled flank, his face etched with frustration. The device translated the Xyler's deep rumbling into crude emotional approximations: distress, unease, pain. It was useless for conveying specifics. "It's not enough," Joshua said, his voice tight with frustration. "I can feel it, but I can't explain it." A piercing alarm shattered the tense silence. "Security breach. Unauthorized transport detected in Sector 4. Locate and apprehend." Varkos wasn't wasting any time. "We have to go," Zara said, her voice urgent. She activated a series of holographic projectors, creating illusory corridors and dead ends in the main access tunnel. A crude diversion, but it might buy them a few precious moments. They raced through the outpost, adrenaline coursing through their veins. But as they reached the main hangar, a squad of Draconis security forces materialized, weapons raised. "Zara, stand down. Release the human and the creature." Before Zara could react, the Xyler roared, a sound that ripped through the hangar like a physical force. The holding field flickered, buckled, and shattered. The Xyler, sensing their distress, had broken free. Chaos erupted. Draconis soldiers scattered, weapons fire ricocheting off the metal walls. In the confusion, Zara and Joshua were separated. Zara tackled a security guard, disarming him before he could fire. But as she turned, she saw Joshua surrounded, his face pale with fear, as he was dragged away towards a waiting transport. She lunged forward, but another guard blocked her path. "Joshua!" she screamed, but her voice was lost in the din. With a surge of strength born of desperation, Zara managed to break free, but the transport was already lifting off, disappearing into the swirling Xylosian sky. Knowing she couldn't save Joshua, she was able to slip through a side door and disappear into the jungle. Back on the observation deck, the Xyler paced restlessly, its massive claws scraping against the metal floor. The Draconis scientists, their faces pale and sweating, watched from behind reinforced glass. The air vibrated with an almost unbearable tension. Then, without warning, the Xyler unleashed an infrasonic pulse of unimaginable power. The very structure of the observation deck groaned and shuddered. Alarms blared. The scientists screamed, clutching their heads in agony. The glass began to crack. The observation deck dissolved into pandemonium. Alarms blared, casting the room in strobing red light. Draconis officials stumbled, clutching their heads as the infrasonic pulse from Xylar resonated through the metal framework. Equipment sparked and sputtered, monitors flickered, and the air crackled with discharged energy. Joshua winced, his small hands flying to his ears, though not from pain. The sound felt familiar, like a deep hum vibrating in his very bones. Amidst the chaos, Counselor Varkos, his scaled face impassive, barked orders. Containment breach. Seal off Sector Gamma. All personnel report to your stations. And someone get that child secured. His crimson eyes narrowed with suspicion, fixed on Joshua. This incident only solidified his conviction. The boy was the key, and he would control him. Within minutes, Joshua found himself strapped to a cold, metallic table in a sterile research facility. Draconis scientists, their faces obscured by masks and visors, hovered over him, their multi-jointed fingers manipulating an array of bizarre instruments. Wires snaked across his scalp, feeding data into humming consoles. The air hung thick with the antiseptic tang of Draconis bio-cleaner and the ozone scent of the scanning equipment. Each scan was another wave of invasive probing. Joshua squirmed, a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. He tried to focus, to reach out to Xylar, but a dull ache throbbed behind his eyes, blocking the connection. He missed the warmth of the sun, the feel of the Xylos breeze on his skin. Here he was just a specimen, a puzzle to be dissected. Meanwhile, Zara, branded a traitor for her interference, navigated the shadowy underbelly of the Draconis city. She moved through dimly lit corridors and crowded marketplaces, her once pristine uniform now stained and torn. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. Finally, she reached her destination, a hidden laboratory tucked away in the forgotten depths of the city. Inside, 3 rogue Draconis scientists huddled around a holographic display, their faces etched with concern. "Zara, you shouldn't have come," one of them, a grizzled veteran named Trella, said, her voice a low hiss. "Varkos has eyes everywhere." "I had to," Zara replied, her voice tight with urgency. "They're experimenting on Joshua. What did you find out about the infrasonic pulse?" Trella gestured to the holographic display, which showed a swirling vortex of energy encompassing the planet. "Xylar's infrasonic emissions aren't just communication," she explained. "They're a form of resonance, a way for it to sense the health of Xylos itself. It feels the planet's pain." Another scientist, a younger, more idealistic Draconis named Relin, chimed in. "The increased mining activity. It's disrupting Xylos' natural resonance. It's like a constant, agonizing feedback loop for the Xylar." Zara felt a cold dread creep into her heart. The Draconis were not just exploiting Xylos, they were actively harming it, torturing its apex predator. "Varkos knows about this, doesn't he?" Trella nodded grimly. "He ordered the suppression of all data regarding the infrasonic pulse and its connection to the ecological disruption. He's prioritizing short-term gains over the long-term survival of our colony." Back in the research facility, a jolt of pain shot through Joshua's skull. He gasped, his body convulsing against the restraints. Images flooded his mind, parched earth, withered vegetation, and creatures writhing in agony. It was Xylos dying. He saw it all. The crystal caves, the lifeblood of Xylos, and the source of the underground river, now nearly empty due to the mining. He saw it all. The crystal caves, the lifeblood of Xylos, and the source of the underground river, now nearly empty due to the mining. Suddenly, the fragmented visions coalesced, revealing a specific type of mineral deposit that had been depleted. The vision faded, leaving Joshua trembling and disoriented. Zara, meanwhile, was reeling from another revelation. Rel had intercepted a coded communication. Varko's plans to use Joshua to artificially amplify Xylar's infrasonic pulse. he said, his voice trembling. He wants to weaponize it, use it for planetary control. Zara's blood ran cold. They had to get Joshua out of there. Now, we need a plan, she said, her voice steely with persistence. We have to rescue him and find a way to stabilize Xylos before it's too late. The clandestine scientists sprang into action. Trella, with her extensive knowledge of the facility's layout, outlined a plan to sabotage the power grid, creating a diversion. Rel, a master of computer systems, prepared a virus to disrupt the security network. Joshua, sensing the shift in energy, focused his will. He could feel Zara's presence, her grit resonating like a beacon in the darkness. He strained against the restraints, his mind racing. He had to do something, anything, to help. Drawing on a power he didn't know he possessed, he focused on the neural interface, picturing it shattering, overloading. The machine sputtered, then emitted a high-pitched whine. Sparks flew, and the room plunged into momentary darkness. Under the cover of the chaos, Zara, guided by Trella's schematics, infiltrated the research facility. She moved silently through the darkened corridors, her energy pistol raised, her senses on high alert. Finally, she reached the research chamber. She burst through the door, her weapon trained on the Draconis scientists. "Joshua, are you all right?" "Zara," Joshua cried, relief flooding his face. Before they could react, Counselor Varkos stepped out of the shadows, his crimson eyes burning with fury. "So the traitor returns," he hissed. "I should have known you were behind this." "You're destroying Xylos, Varkos," Zara retorted, her voice unwavering. "And you're using a child to do it." Varkos sneered. "I'm reshaping Xylos to better suit the Draconis." Sentimentality has no place in survival. As they argued, Joshua felt a strange, tingling sensation, a heightened awareness of the surrounding environment. He could sense the subtle vibrations in the walls, the creaks in the ceiling, the structural weaknesses of the facility. "Zara," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "The support beam. Behind you. It's cracked." Zara, trusting Joshua's instincts, sidestepped just as the support beam gave way, sending a shower of debris crashing down. Varkos stumbled back, momentarily stunned. "Now," Joshua yelled. Zara fired a shot at the control panel, disabling the restraints. They scrambled out of the chamber, dodging falling debris. They raced through the corridors, pursued by security forces. The sabotaged power grid had thrown the facility into disarray, but the Draconis were relentless. Rounding a corner, they found themselves cornered. A squad of heavily armed Draconis soldiers blocked their path, their energy weapons trained on them. There was nowhere left to run. Zara propelled them forward, her hand clamped tight around Joshua's wrist. "This way," she hissed, her voice barely audible above the thrumming of the facility. "Ventilation shaft Gamma 7. I rerouted the air flow. The sensors won't pick up our heat signatures." The shaft was a tight squeeze, the metal cold and unforgiving against their skin. Dust motes danced in the faint emergency lighting, each breath tasting of stale, recycled air and metallic grit. As they crawled, Joshua tugged at Zara's sleeve. "Wait," he whispered, his brow furrowed. "I hear them, they're scared." Zara paused, her expression hardening. "Joshua, we don't have time, they'll be after us soon." "But they're hurting," he insisted, his voice tinged with distress. "Like Xyler, trapped." Zara followed his gaze. From somewhere deeper in the facility came faint whimpers and panicked cries. Joshua was sensing the other captive animals, their fear amplifying his own. He balled his fists, his earlier apprehension hardening into steely perseverance. "We have to help them too," he declared, his voice firm. Ahead, a maintenance panel flickered erratically. "Hold here," Zara instructed. She pried open the panel, revealing a tangle of wires and conduits. After a moment's work, she extracted a small, rectangular card. "Access key. Level 4 restrictions. It won't get us everywhere, but it's better than nothing." A voice crackled from a nearby comm panel. "Sector Gamma 7 secure. No sign of the fugitives." Zara cursed under her breath. "They're tightening the net. We need to move." As they pressed onward, a Draconis engineer emerged from a side passage, wrench in hand. He flinched when he saw them, his eyes darting nervously. "You shouldn't be here," he stammered, glancing around as if expecting to be caught. "They know you're gone. High Command member Tarok is furious." "Tarok?" Zara's voice was sharp. "What's he planning?" The engineer hesitated, then lowered his voice. "He's accelerating the weaponization process. A full-scale test is scheduled for the next cycle. He's not waiting any longer." He thrust a data chip into Zara's hand. "Take this. It's a schematic of the security grid. It might buy you some time, but be careful. He's ruthless." He paused, his face etched with worry. "What you're doing?" "It's right, but if they catch me helping you." He didn't finish the sentence. Zara nodded grimly. "Thank you," she said, her voice sincere. "You're braver than you think." They moved quickly, Zara leading the way, the access card granting them passage through several restricted areas. But as they passed a holding cell, Joshua stopped dead in his tracks. Inside, several small, furry creatures huddled together, their eyes wide with terror. Without thinking, Joshua swiped the access card, overriding the lock. The cell door hissed open. A klaxon blared, bathing the corridor in pulsating red light. "Alert! Security breach in Sector Delta 9. Lockdown initiated." "Joshua, no," Zara shouted, grabbing his arm. "We have to go." They sprinted down the corridor, the alarm echoing behind them. They ducked into the first open doorway they could find, slamming the door shut and locking it behind them. The room was dark and musty, filled with the stale scent of forgotten experiments. Dust lay thick on the equipment, and cobwebs draped across the consoles. It was an abandoned research lab. Zara activated a nearby terminal, its screen flickering to life. "Dead end," she muttered. "But maybe." She began sifting through the archived files, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Joshua wandered through the lab, his fingers trailing across the dusty equipment. He stopped before a row of deactivated sensors, his brow furrowed. "What were they studying here?" he asked. "Infrasonics," Zara replied, her voice distant. "They were trying to understand Xyler's communication. They believed its infrasound was linked to the planet's unique magnetic field and mineral composition." Her fingers stopped abruptly on the keyboard. Her eyes widened. "Wait a minute." She scrolled through a series of data logs, her expression growing increasingly grim. "The increased mining activity. It's not just depleting resources, it's interfering with the planet's natural resonance. It's causing pain and aggression in Xyler." Joshua, meanwhile, was staring intently at the deactivated sensors. He closed his eyes, his face contorting slightly. "I hear it," he whispered. "Faint. Like a heartbeat, but wrong, hurting." "What do you hear, Joshua?" Zara asked, her voice filled with urgency. "Xyler," he replied, his eyes still closed. "He's calling for help." Suddenly, the lights flickered and the terminal screen went blank. A low, guttural hum filled the room, growing louder with each passing second. "Hunter-seeker drones," Zara hissed, drawing her sidearm. "Tarok is bypassing standard security protocols. He wants us dead." Joshua grabbed her hand, his eyes wide with fear. "This way," he urged, pulling her toward a darkened corner of the lab. "There's a way out. I can feel it." He led her through a narrow passage hidden behind a storage cabinet, the hum of the drones growing ever closer. The passage opened into a maintenance tunnel, which in turn led to a hidden exit concealed behind a dense thicket of Zalosian vines. They burst out of the facility and into the dense jungle, the humid air heavy on their skin. The jungle floor was a tangled mess of roots and thorny vines. Giant, bioluminescent fungi cast an eerie glow on the surroundings. As they moved deeper into the jungle, they were surrounded by a chorus of strange clicks, chirps, and rustling sounds. Suddenly, a group of indigenous Zalosian creatures emerged from the shadows. They were bipedal, with thick, leathery hides and razor-sharp claws. They snarled, their eyes glowing menacingly in the dim light. Zara raised her weapon, but Joshua stepped forward, his hands outstretched. "No," he said softly, his voice calm and soothing. We don't want to hurt you, we just want to help. The creatures hesitated, their snarls softening slightly. Joshua reached out and gently touched one of the creatures on the head. It flinched at first, then slowly relaxed, its eyes losing some of their hostility. Joshua turned to Zara, his expression grave. They're hurting too, he said. The mining, it's destroying their homes. Their water is poisoned. One of the creatures tilted its head as if understanding. It nudged Joshua with its snout, then turned and moved into the jungle, beckoning them to follow. They followed the creature through a winding path until they reached a hidden cave system concealed behind a waterfall. Inside the cave, a large crystalline structure pulsed with a soft blue light. The air thrummed with energy. An ancient Zalosian artifact, Zara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Resonating with infrasonic energy, this could be the key to understanding. To restoring Xylos's natural resonance. Suddenly, Joshua gasped, clutching his head. It's stronger now, he said, his voice strained. The signal. I can see it, a place. The mineral deposit, it's almost empty. A calm signal on Zara's wrist chimed. Zara, this is command. Report your location immediately. Zara ignored the call. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the jungle. They're here, Zara said grimly, drawing her weapon. They won't stop until they have us. Joshua pointed toward the cave entrance. We have to go to the mineral deposit, he said, his voice filled with commitment. It's the only way to save Xylar and Xylos. As they emerged from the cave, they were met by a wall of Draconis soldiers, led by High Command member Tarok himself. He stood before them, his eyes cold and unforgiving. End of the line, Zara, Tarok said, his voice dripping with contempt. You've made a grave mistake. He gestured towards Joshua. Seize the boy and eliminate the traitor. The air crackled with energy, the ground vibrated. Zara reacted instantly, a metallic cylinder flashing in her hand. She slammed it against the rock face. A cloud of dense, acrid smoke erupted, filling the narrow passageway. Visibility plummeted to near zero. Automated weapons fire tore through the smoke, the energy bolts sizzling past, close enough to singe Joshua's hair. Move, Joshua, now. Zara's voice was a strange shout, barely audible above the din. But Joshua couldn't move. Xylar's infrasonic distress had spiked, a wave of agonizing pain crashing through his mind. He stumbled, his vision blurring, images flooding his senses, twisted rock, corrupted mineral veins pulsing with sickly green light, the very lifeblood of Xylos poisoned. He collapsed, the alien landscape swirling around him. Zara, firing blindly into the smoke, felt a searing pain lance through her side. An energy bolt had grazed her armor, burning through the protective layers. She gritted her teeth, ignoring the pain, and dragged Joshua behind a crumbling rock formation, shielding him with her body. Then, as suddenly as it began, the onslaught ceased. The High Command member, whoever he was regrouping, reassessing. The smoke began to dissipate, revealing the devastation-scorched rock, shattered equipment, and Zara breathing heavily, her side stained crimson. Joshua gasped, his eyes snapping open. The vision receded, leaving him trembling and disoriented, but something had shifted. He knew. He knew where the pain originated, the exact location of the corrupted mineral deposit, the source of Xylar's torment. The minerals, he stammered, pushing himself up. There, poisoned, I know where. Zara pressed a hand to her wound, her face grim. He'll be waiting for us. This was just a taste. We have to go, Joshua insisted, his voice surprisingly firm. Xylar. He's dying. Xylos is dying. We have to stop it. They moved swiftly, cautiously, deeper into the mining complex. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of blood and the cloying sweetness of the corrupted minerals. The High Command member had anticipated their move. Automated turrets, their energy weapons humming menacingly, guarded the approaches to the mineral deposit. As they skirted the main thoroughfare, they stumbled upon a group of Draconis miners, their faces gaunt and weary, their eyes hollow. They were hacking at the rock face with energy picks, their movements sluggish and defeated. The air around them shimmered with heat and toxic fumes. Joshua felt a pang of empathy, a wave of resentment and fear emanating from the miners. They weren't collaborators, they were victims trapped by the high command members' greed and disregard for their well-being. Zara approached them, her voice low and urgent. "We need your help. That official is destroying this planet. He's poisoning the minerals and he's forcing you to work in these conditions." One of the miners, a grizzled veteran with deep-set eyes, spat on the ground. "Help you? What's it to us? We're all dead anyway, one way or another." "It's about more than just survival," Zara countered, her voice rising with passion. "It's about justice. It's about saving Xyler, saving Xylos. He's not just hurting you, he's hurting everyone. And if we don't stop him, there won't be anything left to exploit." Joshua stepped forward, his voice soft but clear. "Xyler is in pain. He's connected to this planet, to you. We can stop the pain, but we need your help." The miners exchanged glances, a flicker of hope igniting in their eyes. The veteran miner nodded slowly. "There's a tunnel, an old access route to the deposit. Unstable, but it bypasses the turrets." He led them to a darkened corner of the mine, revealing a narrow opening concealed behind a pile of discarded equipment. The tunnel was cramped and claustrophobic, the air thick with dust and the smell of damp rock. Water trickled down the walls, forming slick patches on the uneven floor. "Be warned," the miner said, his voice grim. "The geology in there is unstable. There's been disturbances." As they ventured deeper into the tunnel, Joshua felt a growing sense of unease. The infrasonic energy was intensifying, a palpable vibration that resonated in his bones. He detected a pocket of highly concentrated energy ahead, a sign of extreme geological stress. Suddenly, the tunnel shuddered violently. A section of the roof collapsed, sending a shower of rock and debris cascading down upon them. Zara cried out, shielding Joshua with her body. When the dust settled, they were trapped. A wall of rubble blocked their path, separating them from the miners. Zara clutched her side, her face contorted in pain. The energy bolt had done more damage than she initially realized. "Go, Joshua," she gasped, her voice weak. I can't make it." Joshua stared at her, his heart pounding in his chest. "I can't leave you." "You have to," Zara insisted, her eyes pleading. "Xyler, Xylos, they need you. There's a small opening. I think you can squeeze through." She was right. Wedged between two massive boulders was a narrow passage, barely large enough for a child to navigate. Tears streamed down Joshua's face. "I'll come back for you, I promise." Zara managed a weak smile. "Just save them, Joshua, save them all." Reluctantly, Joshua squeezed through the opening, leaving Zara behind in the darkness. The passage was tight and suffocating, the rock pressing in on all sides. He crawled forward, driven by a desperate hope and a heavy sense of responsibility. Finally, he emerged into a vast cavern, the heart of the mineral deposit. The sight that greeted him was horrifying. The once pristine cavern had been transformed into a wasteland, a gaping wound in the planet's surface. Giant machines, their metal bodies gleaming under harsh spotlights, were tearing into the rock, extracting the minerals with brutal efficiency. He could feel Xyler's presence nearby, drawn to the source of the pain, but weakened, diminished. The creature's infrasonic signature was fragmented and weak, a desperate plea for help. Joshua spotted it then, a large, cylindrical device attached to one of the mining machines. It was emitting a high-frequency sonic pulse, a piercing shriek that resonated through the cavern, causing the very rock to vibrate. It was agonizing to Xyler, a weapon designed to break its spirit. Before Joshua could reach the device, a voice echoed through the cavern. "Impressive, human. I didn't think you'd make it this far." The high command member stepped out of the shadows, his face cold and calculating. "But it seems your little adventure ends here. You see, this isn't just about extracting minerals. This is about power, about harnessing the infrasonic energy of Xyler, amplifying it, weaponizing it. Imagine the possibilities, human. A weapon that can shatter planets, control minds, and you, little boy, are standing in the way. And lunged. Joshua yelped, scrambling back as the high command member's hand, scaled and thick as a paving stone, swept through the space where he'd just been. The air cracked with the force of it. He ducked under the next blow, the metallic tang of fear sharp on his tongue. He was small, quick. The Draconis was a wall of muscle and rage. He darted behind a stack of synth kelp crates, the high command member roaring in frustration as his fist splintered the top one. His fingers brushed against something cool and metallic, a mining tool left carelessly propped against the stack. He snatched it up. It was heavier than he expected, a dull, matte black cylinder with a vibrating head used for sonic extraction. As the high command member rounded the crates, Joshua raised the tool defensively. A wave of nausea washed over him, a discordant hum resonating through his bones. It was the sonic amplifier, but different. The mining tool in his hand thrummed, a sympathetic vibration. Then it hit him. Not just the pain, the bone-deep ache the sonic pulses inflicted, but something else. A desperate, keening silence. Xyler. He could feel the creature's distress amplified, twisted into agony, but underneath something vital was missing. Xyler wasn't just in pain, he was blind, deaf, cut off. "You don't understand," Joshua shouted, his voice tight with panic. "It's not just hurting him, it's blocking him. He can't hear Xylos." The high command member snarled, grabbing Joshua by the arm. His grip was like iron. "Silence, human. You will not interfere with the progress of the Draconis." Joshua thrashed, kicking and struggling, but the high command member was too strong. He dragged Joshua towards the amplifier, his intent clear. He was going to crank it up, maximize the disruptive field. "Please," Joshua cried, tears stinging his eyes. "You're killing Xyler, you're killing Xylos, this pulse. It's stopping him from talking to the planet. He needs to feel the tremors, the flows. It's how he keeps everything balanced." He saw them then, faces flickering in the periphery. Draconis miners watching from the shadows, their eyes hollow, their bodies slumped with exhaustion. Their faces were etched with the same weariness he'd seen in Xyler's eyes, the weariness of a world being slowly bled dry. "You see this?" Joshua yelled, his voice cracking. "You feel this pain, this sickness. It's not just me, it's Xyler and it's you, this mining, this machine. It's all connected. They promised you prosperity, but all you got was dust and death. Are you going to let them kill our planet?" A long moment of silence hung in the air, broken only by the hum of the amplifier and Joshua's ragged breathing. Then, a miner stepped forward, his face gaunt, his eyes filled with a flicker of defiance. "Enough," he rasped, his voice hoarse from years of breathing dust. He pushed past the others, his gaze fixed on the high command member. "We were promised a new life, not this." He shoved the high command member hard, a clumsy, desperate act of rebellion. It was enough. Joshua wrenched free, scrambling towards the amplifier. He gripped the mining tool, its vibrations a strange comfort against his trembling hands. He didn't know exactly what he was doing, but he had to stop it. He slammed the vibrating head of the mining tool into the control panel, blindly seeking a point of disruption. Sparks flew. The hum of the amplifier stuttered, then shrieked, rising in pitch until it became a deafening whine. The lights flickered, then silence. The high command member roared, staggering towards Joshua, his face contorted with rage. "You little insect!" He swung, a wild, desperate blow. Joshua ducked, the force of the swing pulling the Draconis off balance. He stumbled, crashing into one of the main support beams of the mine. The mining tool, still clutched in Joshua's hand, slammed into the beam with a dull thud. A low rumble echoed through the mine. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. Joshua gasped, clutching his head. The pain was back, sharper, more intense. But it wasn't just pain, it was fear. Xyler's fear. Raw, unadulterated terror. The infrasonic song of Xylos had been muted, and with it the balance of the world had shifted. The mine, already unstable from the relentless extraction, was now on the verge of collapse. The high command member, pinned beneath a pile of fallen rock, snarled, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You haven't won, human. This is just a setback." But Joshua wasn't listening. He was listening to Xylar. And through Xylar, he was listening to Xylos. He closed his eyes, focusing on the tremors, the shifts, the deep, resonant voice of the planet. He touched the high command member's shoulder just for a moment, but it was enough. He understood. It wasn't just about stopping the pain. It was about healing. He turned to the miner, his face pale but resolute. "We have to bring it down," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The whole thing, Xylar says. It needs to collapse to heal." The miner stared at him, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Collapse, but what about the others?" "It's the only way," Joshua insisted. "For Xylos to heal, this wound needs to close. We have to plant the charges." The miners moved with a dogged grit, rigging explosives to the remaining support beams. Joshua pressed his hand against the cool, rough scales of the closest support beam, sending a pulse of reassurance to Xylar. "It's going to be okay. It has to be." Then he scrambled for a discarded comm device, its screen cracked but still functional. He tapped out a message, his fingers flying across the keypad. "Zara, the mine must collapse it. Xylar says only way to heal Xylos. Please understand." Joshua nodded, his gaze locked on the miner's weathered face. "They're primed, Kel, ready when we are." A jolt, not quite a sound but a pressure against his skull, slammed into Joshua. It was Xylar, a wave of panic and pain so intense it nearly buckled his knees. He staggered, grabbing at the rough-hewn support beam to steady himself. The rock dust stung his nostrils, the metallic tang of the mine thick on his tongue, but overriding it all was Xylar's distress. He reached out, not physically but with his mind, sending a wave of calm, of reassurance. "It's all right, old friend. It's a little pain for a lot of healing. I promise." The feedback lessened, a tremor instead of a full-blown earthquake of emotion. Kel shifted his weight, his brow furrowed. "You sure about this, kid? That's a whole lot of explosives. Gonna do a number on the environment." He gestured to the intricate network of support beams holding back the unstable rock. "This whole mountainside could come down." Joshua met his gaze, his voice firm despite the lingering echo of Xylar's pain. "We have to, Kel. The whole system is failing. Xylar. He showed me. This collapse, it's like resetting a broken bone, letting it heal right. If we don't, the rot will spread and everything will die." Kel hesitated for another moment, then sighed, a puff of stale air escaping his lips. "All right, kid, I trust you. Never met anyone who could talk to a Xylar before, or a planet for that matter." He turned to the control panel, his fingers dancing across the worn buttons. Initiating sequence. A low hum filled the air, the red numerals on the timer display blinking to life. 000500. Joshua glanced towards the base of the collapsed section, a flicker of movement catching his eye. The high command member, the one who had so adamantly opposed their plan, was struggling amidst the fallen debris, his face contorted in a mask of panic and rage. "You'll pay for this," he screamed, his voice muffled by the rocks. "You've doomed us all. Treason." Joshua ignored him, focusing on the timer, on Xylar's fading pain, on the faint tremor in the ground that was growing stronger with each passing second. The high command member was a casualty, a consequence of a much larger imperative. The air grew heavy, the scent of ozone sharp in his nostrils. The very rock seemed to vibrate, a low thrumming that resonated deep within his bones. Something was shifting, something fundamental. Xylos itself was holding its breath. This was going to be bigger than they thought. A ping sounded on Zara's comm. It was Joshua, his voice tight with urgency. "Zara, it's worse than we thought. Something's happening. You need to get us out of here. Now." Zara, standing before the remaining members of the High Command, the faces a mix of anger and disbelief, didn't hesitate. "Reroute transport vessel 7 Delta. Immediate extraction. Coordinates." She rattled off the location of the mine, ignoring the protests erupting around her. "That's an order." The transport shuddered as it broke atmosphere, hurtling towards the designated coordinates. Zara clutched the armrests, her fist clenched. Joshua's voice, the urgency in his tone, had overridden all doubt. They arrived at the mine just as the timer hit 0. The ground lurched violently, throwing Zara against the bulkhead. A deafening roar ripped through the air, followed by a cacophony of grinding rock and splintering metal. The mountainside was collapsing in on itself, a monstrous wave of debris engulfing the mine entrance. The transport pilot fought to maintain control, the ship bucking and swaying in the shockwaves. The entrance to the mine was sealed in a matter of seconds, a tomb of rock and twisted metal. A figure emerged from the dust cloud, silhouetted against the fading light. It was Joshua, helping Kel scramble onto the boarding ramp. The ramp retracted just as another section of the mountainside gave way, sealing the entrance completely. The high command member was gone, buried beneath tons of rock. As the dust began to settle, a faint glow emanated from the newly formed scar on the landscape. It intensified, spreading across the surface of Xylos like a network of veins, pulsing with an ethereal light. The bioluminescence, never before seen on this scale, illuminated the alien landscape in a breathtaking display. The light pulsed with a rhythm, a slow, deliberate beat that seemed to echo Xyler's infrasonic communication. Zara stared out at the glowing landscape, her face a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Joshua, what does it mean? Joshua, what does it mean?" Joshua's brow furrowed, his gaze fixed on the pulsing bioluminescent flora clinging to the cavern walls. He says, "It's like a scream, the planet. It's thirsty, but not for water, for something else. Something missing." He pointed to a patch of particularly vibrant fungi, its glow almost painfully bright. "That's where it hurts the most. Xyler says the water. It's not right, it needs." Zara activated her wrist-mounted scanner, targeting the area Joshua indicated. The readings flickered, then stabilized, displaying a series of complex chemical analyses. Her draconis eyes widened. "A mineral imbalance. Significant depletion of chromium silicate." He's right, but how could he possibly know? The transport ship shuddered as it docked within the main draconis base. The ramp hissed open, revealing not the welcoming committee Zara expected, but a phalanx of stern-faced high command members, weapons drawn. "Zara Vale," barked Commander Thrax, his voice amplified by his helmet's vocoder, "you are ordered to stand down. Your actions are bordering on treason, endangering the entire colony by trusting a human child and a wild beast." Zara stood her ground, placing herself protectively in front of Joshua. "I am not endangering anyone. Joshua has shown an understanding of Xyler and this planet that none of us have been able to achieve. He's the key to solving this crisis." "Crisis? You've created a crisis. By indulging this child's fantasies, you've distracted us from real threats." Thrax gestured dismissively at Joshua. "He will be confined for study, and you, Vale, will be relieved of your duties pending a full investigation." "I refuse," Zara stated, her voice ringing with defiance. "I will take full responsibility for the outcome. Give me a chance to prove that Joshua's insights are valid. Give me 72 hours. Thrax's mandibles clicked in annoyance. 72 hours. That is all you get, Vale. If you fail, you will face the consequences, and the human will become a permanent resident of our research labs." As the high command contingent dispersed, a draconis scientist, his face etched with worry, approached Zara. "Commander Vale, I've run a series of independent analyses based on the humans. Claims the mineral imbalance is indeed affecting the native flora. The xenoalgae, a primary food source for the shimmerwings, are showing signs of rapid decline." Joshua tugged on Zara's sleeve. "The shimmerwings are getting sick, and then the rock hoppers will get sick because they eat the shimmerwings. It's like dominoes." Zara felt a cold dread creep into her heart. The ecological crisis was far more widespread and urgent than she had initially believed. We need to understand the full extent of the damage. Joshua, can you ask Xyler? Inside the Xyler enclosure, Joshua closed his eyes, placing his hand against the creature's massive, scaled flank. A low, resonant hum filled the air, infrasound, imperceptible to Draconis' ears but clear as a bell to Joshua. He opened his eyes, his expression grave. Xyler says, "There's a big place, a place where the missing stuff is, but it's shaky, dangerous." Zara accessed the planetary geological survey data on her wristpad. He's referring to the Obsidian Peaks, highly unstable tectonic region. Frequent seismic activity. It's suicide to go there. She looked at Joshua, then back at the data. But if that's where the chromium silicate is concentrated, we have no choice. We need to extract that mineral and redistribute it to the affected areas, Zara announced, outlining a plan on a holographic display. It's a long shot, a risky operation, but it's the only way to prevent a complete ecological collapse. Commander Thrax's voice crackled over the comm system. "Vale, your request for heavy mining equipment and a transport team has been approved. Reluctantly, but be warned, if this venture proves to be another wild goose chase, there will be severe repercussions." Zara knelt before Joshua, her expression serious. "This is dangerous, Joshua. I won't force you to go. Are you willing to risk your life for this?" Joshua placed his hand back on Xyler. He looked up, his eyes meeting Zara's, and she heard in her mind, clear as day, Xyler's voice in infrasound, a deep resonance of reassurance, of trust, of something akin to love. Just then, an urgent message flashed across Zara's comms. "Commander Vale, we have received a distress signal from Mining Team Gamma at the Obsidian Peaks. Commander Rixus is still alive but seriously wounded. His last transmission stated that Zara Vale should be immediately arrested for the death of his team. Zara ignored the insistent chirping of her comm implant, the summons for her arrest a shrill counterpoint to the rumble beneath her boots. Xylos was not waiting. The planet's hunger for the minerals grew with each passing moment. "Prep team for immediate deployment," she barked at the nearest technician, her voice tight with urgency. "We move now." Within minutes, Zara had assembled a skeletal crew, those few she trusted implicitly, their faces etched with a mixture of loyalty and apprehension. Resources were stretched thin, the transport ship barely spaceworthy, its hull scarred with the acidic burns of Xylos' atmosphere. Time, however, was the most critical deficit. Meanwhile, on the Draconis High Command vessel orbiting Xylos, Koreth, his carapace still bearing the faint scars of the Xylers' attack, addressed a gathering of sympathetic officers. "Zara Vale has proven herself a rogue element, a danger to our colony. I move for her immediate and permanent removal from command." His words, permeated with venom, found fertile ground among those who already questioned Zara's unorthodox methods. The seeds of doubt were sown. Whispers spread through the Draconis ranks tales of Zara's recklessness, her obsession with the human child, Joshua, and the untamed beast he seemed to control. They painted a picture of a commander compromised, a threat to the very safety she was sworn to protect. The transport shuddered violently as it pierced Xylos' turbulent atmosphere. Lightning crackled across the viewport, illuminating a landscape of twisted rock formations and churning, ochre-colored clouds. Seismic tremors rattled the ship, a constant reminder of the planet's volatile nature. Xyler says, "Careful," Joshua mumbled, his brow furrowed with concentration. He reached out, his small hand resting against the cold metal of the transport wall, as if feeling the planet's pulse. "Path, shifts, follow the blue crystals." The extraction site was a scene of barely controlled chaos. The air thrummed with the whine of machinery and the hiss of geothermal vents. As the team began to unpack the mining equipment, a grim discovery was made. Vital conduits were severed, power regulators shattered, their delicate mechanisms deliberately destroyed. Sabotage, growled Ren, Zara's chief engineer, his mandibles clicking in anger. Someone wants us to fail. Zara's gaze hardened. Korath, she hissed, the name of venomous curse. Increase security. No one leaves this perimeter without authorization. Joshua tugged at Zara's sleeve, his eyes wide with alarm. Xyler, he's scared, ground. Wrong, it's going to fall. Ignoring the mounting setbacks, the team pressed on, their movements frantic, driven by a desperate need to extract the minerals before time ran out. The mining laser sputtered and coughed, its energy output crippled by the sabotaged components. Every minute felt like an eternity as they chipped away at the mineral deposit, the air thick with dust and the stench of ozone. Then, the world lurched. The ground bucked beneath their feet, sending equipment tumbling and scattering the team. A deafening roar echoed through the cavern as cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling. Cave in, Ren screamed, his voice barely audible above the din. Panic seized the team. Some scrambled for the transport, abandoning the mission, their faces contorted with terror. Zara, however, stood firm, her eyes scanning the collapsing cavern, searching for Joshua. Reinforce the entrance. She bellowed, her voice cutting through the chaos. Use the structural pylons now. Her knowledge of Draconis engineering, honed over years of service, allowed her to devise a desperate plan to stabilize the crumbling tunnel. Zara, Joshua's voice, faint but clear, echoed from the depths of the cavern. I'm here. Follow the infrasound. Zara activated her helmet's enhanced hearing, filtering out the Kakin, NY of the cave-in. A low, resonant hum filled her ears, a series of complex vibrations guiding her through the maze of collapsing tunnels. Xyler. She plunged into the darkness, ignoring the protests of her remaining team. The tunnel walls groaned and shifted, threatening to crush her with every step. Guided by Joshua's infrasonic map, she navigated the treacherous path, her heart pounding in her chest. She found him huddled in a small pocket of air, dust coating his face, his eyes filled with fear. But it wasn't just Joshua. In a nearby cavern, pinned beneath a fallen rock, lay Xyler, his massive form shuddering with pain. A deep gash marred his flank, oozing iridescent fluid. Zara, please, Joshua begged, his voice choked with emotion. He's hurt, you have to help him. Then a new layer of infrasound washed over her, not a warning of collapse, but a desperate, frantic plea. Images flooded her mind, not of falling rock, but of a fiery object streaking across the sky, a cataclysmic impact that would obliterate everything. Meteor. Xylene, ascent warning of a cave-in. He was warning of an extinction-level event. And Zara had to choose. Save the child and the beast, or save her team. Zara's breath hitched in her throat. Rescue her team, trapped and vulnerable, or trust a child and an alien apex predator who claimed a meteor was about to vaporize them all. Her gaze flickered between the comm readout displaying the extraction team's dwindling life support and Joshua's unwavering eyes. Zara, Lieutenant Varkos's voice crackled over the comm, imbued with static and panic. The tremors are getting worse. We don't know how much longer this section will hold. Zara closed her eyes for a split second, then opened them, stealing her dedication. Chief Engineer Ryla, I need you to reroute power to life support and prep a secondary extraction team. We're prioritizing Xyler. Ryla's voice, usually calm and measured, crackled with disbelief. Prioritizing what, Commander? With all due respect, that creature is an animal. Our people are trapped. He knows more than we do about what's coming, Joshua interjected, his voice surprisingly firm. Xyler says the ground is going to break apart, the sky is going to burn. Ryla scoffed. The boy is delusional. We can't risk more lives on a hunch, Commander. It's illogical, a waste of resources. Zara's lips pursed. He's not delusional, Ryla, and it's not a hunch, it's all we have. I'm trusting him, I need you to trust me. We reach Xyler, then we save your team. Though she said it with conviction, she felt the lie in her heart. Ryla was silent for a beat. With respect, Commander, I cannot in good conscience follow that order. My team and I are proceeding with the original extraction plan. Zara knew arguing was pointless. Understood. Varkos, keep me updated. Ryla, good luck. She cut the connection, the weight of their disagreement settling heavily on her shoulders. She watched as Ryla turned and began to march in the opposite direction with half the team. Turning to Joshua and the remaining members of her team, Zara said, "Let's move. Now." They plunged into the unstable caverns, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and something acrid. The ground trembled beneath their boots with every aftershock. Water dripped from the cavern ceiling, each drop echoing in the oppressive darkness. Joshua, his eyes wide but determined, pointed the way. Left, then right. Xyler is close, but the air, it burns. Suddenly, a hiss erupted from a fissure in the cavern wall. A cloud of iridescent green gas billowed out, stinging Zara's eyes and causing her suit's environmental sensors to scream warnings. "Corrosive gas, seal your visors," she yelled, her voice muffled by her helmet. The gas ate at their suits, leaving trails of bubbling, dissolving polymer. Joshua tugged at her arm, pulling her forward. "This way. Xyler says the air is cleaner ahead." They stumbled through the gas-filled passage, their lungs burning, until they reached a slightly larger cavern. Lying on the cavern floor, its massive scaled body heaving, was Xyler. A jagged piece of rock was embedded in its flank, and its eyes, usually bright and intelligent, were clouded with pain. A wave of infrasound washed over Zara, a cacophony of distress and urgency. Joshua gasped, clutching his head. He says the meteor, it will bring fire, but the ground. It holds a stone, a red stone, that can push the fire away. Zara stared at Joshua, then at Xyler. The creature's gaze was fixed on her, pleading. "What kind of stone?" she asked Joshua, her voice tight with desperation. He doesn't know the word. "But it is different, not like the metal we take. It shines, with red light," Joshua replied. Zara activated her comm. "This is Commander Zara to anyone who can hear me. We need a geological scan of this sector, priority 1. I'm looking for a mineral deposit, reddish in color, not metallic. Something that reflects light." A beat of silence, then a response. "Understood, Commander." Stand by. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, the response came. "Commander, we've identified a small deposit of what appears to be rhodonite, approximately 2 kilometers southeast of your current location." "Rhodonite," Zara repeated, relief washing over her. "Xyler, can you lead us?" Xyler shifted slightly, emitting a weak pulse of infrasound. Joshua nodded. "Yes." "He knows the way, but it is guarded." Zara sent a coded message to her remaining team requesting reinforcements and heavy transport. Meanwhile, aboard the Draconis command ship, Korath watched the coded message scroll across his screen, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "Rhodonite," he murmured. "So, the creature knows about the meteor. Interesting." He tapped a command into his console. "Divert support Team Gamma to Grid Sane, R7 Delta 9. Report a false cave-in, and prepare a squad for mineral extraction. It seems Commander Zara has stumbled upon something valuable." Korath's forces landed near the extraction site, weapons ready. Zara, Joshua, and their small team pressed on, guided by Xyler's infrasound and Joshua's translations. They reached the rhodonite deposit, a vein of crimson rock embedded in the cavern wall. But guarding it was a creature unlike any they had encountered before. A massive, 6-legged beast with razor-sharp claws and eyes that glowed with territorial rage. It roared, a sound that echoed through the cavern, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Joshua stepped forward, his hand outstretched. "He's scared," he said softly. "He says the ground is angry, and the sky, it will fall." The creature lowered its head, sniffing Joshua's hand cautiously. Then, to Zara's astonishment, it nudged his palm with its snout, emitting a low, mournful growl. "He wants to be safe," Joshua explained. "He says if we take him with us, he will help us dig." Zara, her mind racing, saw an opportunity. "Can he carry the rhodonite?" Joshua relayed the question. The creature rumbled in response, then lowered its massive shoulder, indicating its willingness to bear the load. "All right," Zara said, grabbing a mining laser. "Let's get to work, and keep an eye out. Something doesn't feel right." They worked quickly, the mining lasers cutting through the rock, the creature patiently hauling the rhodonite fragments onto its back. As the last chunk of mineral was loaded, the cavern entrance exploded in a hail of laser fire. "Korath," Zara growled, drawing her weapon. He knew. "Hold the line," she ordered her team. "Protect the rhodonite, I'll deal with Korath." Zara advanced, her weapon raised. "Korath, what is the meaning of this? We need this mineral to protect everyone." Korath sneered, his eyes glinting with malicious intent. "Protect them from what, Zara? From your delusions. This mineral is far too valuable to waste on a fairy tale. Step aside, Zara. This deposit belongs to the Draconis High Command. There's a meteor coming, Korath. We need this rhodonite to deflect it. You're condemning us all," Zara pleaded. Korath laughed, a cold, heartless sound. "A meteor? Please, Zara, you expect me to believe that? This is just a desperate ploy to seize control of this sector. It won't work." As Korath's forces advanced, the territorial creature, sensing the threat to its newfound allies, roared and charged into the fray. Its massive claws tore through the Draconis soldiers, scattering them like ragdolls. Its armored hide deflected laser fire, and its powerful tail sent shockwaves through the ground, disrupting the attackers' balance. The firefight turned chaotic, the fate of Xylos hanging in the balance, dependent on a child's empathy and an unlikely alliance. The energy bolts sizzled past Zara's helmet, each impact against the ferrocrete wall showering them with sparks. The air crackled with the acrid smell of ozone and burning synth flesh. Korath's forces were pressing hard, their superior numbers slowly but surely gaining ground. "Fall back, regroup at the thermal vents," Zara barked into her comm, the words clipped and urgent. They scrambled for cover, using the jagged rock formations as natural shields, each step crunching on the crystalline ground. The territorial creature, snarling and snapping at the advancing Draconis, took a searing blast that tore through its armored flank. It roared in pain, a sound that echoed through the canyon before collapsing. Joshua, ignoring the continuing barrage, rushed to the creature's side. He pressed his hands against the wound, his brow furrowed in concentration. A faint blue light emanated from his palms, knitting the alien flesh back together. The territorial creature shuddered, then slowly rose to its feet, its eyes locking onto Joshua's with what could only be gratitude. It roared again, this time a defiant challenge, and charged back into the fray, fighting with renewed ferocity. Korath's voice crackled over the comms, infused with frustration. "Focus fire on the human, he's the key, capture him alive." Zara cursed under her breath. They knew. They understood the connection between Joshua and the Xyler. "Delta Squad, protect Joshua, he's our priority." "Lay down suppressing fire." She spun, unleashing a volley of plasma bolts, drawing the enemy's attention. Amidst the chaos, Joshua stumbled back, clutching his head. He gasped, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and understanding. The territorial creature, sensing his distress, nudged him urgently. "The meteor," Joshua stammered, his voice barely audible above the din. It's going to hit soon," Xyler says. "The mineral, it needs to be moved further inland." Zara stared at him, her expression a mask of disbelief. "Moved where?" "To the Canyon of Whispers, it showed me," Joshua insisted, pointing towards a narrow gorge etched into the far side of the valley. "But it's too heavy, we can't move it alone." Zara hesitated for only a fraction of a second. "We have no choice, we trust him." She spoke into her comm. "Echo team, prepare to move the mineral. Delta Squad, maintain our perimeter and provide cover." A gruff voice responded, permeated with skepticism. "Commander, are you sure about this? Prioritizing a human over our own survival." Zara's voice hardened. "That's an order, Sergeant. Anyone who disobeys will face court-martial." She turned to Joshua, her eyes filled with a steely determination. "We move now. Every second counts." Zara selected two of her most trusted soldiers, Jax and Rena. Together with Joshua and the territorial creature, they wrestled the heavy mineral onto a makeshift sled constructed from salvaged wreckage. The creature strained against the weight, its muscles bulging as they began to drag it towards the canyon. They hadn't gone far when a hail of energy fire erupted around them. A small squad of Koreth's forces, having flanked their position, ambushed them from the high ground. "Take cover," Zara yelled, returning fire. The territorial creature, roaring in defiance, charged towards the attackers, scattering them like ragdolls. It absorbed the brunt of the attack, shielding Zara and the others. With a final, earth-shattering bellow, it collapsed, its body riddled with energy burns. Koreth strode into the clearing, his face contorted with rage. "The human, where is he?" He surveyed the carnage, his eyes burning with fury. "Find them. I want them alive." Zara, Joshua, Jax, and Rena pressed on, the image of the territorial creature's sacrifice burned into their minds. They finally reached the Canyon of Whispers, a narrow gorge carved into the rock face, its walls lined with strange, resonating crystals. "Here," Joshua said, pointing to a specific spot in the center of the canyon. "Zyler says, right here, this is where it needs to be." As they struggled to position the mineral, a streak of fire tore across the sky. The meteor, a blazing inferno, plunged towards them. Suddenly, Koreth's ship appeared, blocking their escape. Energy weapons charged, bathing the canyon in an ominous glow. They were trapped. The meteor hurtled towards them from one direction, and Koreth's ship loomed menacingly from the other. The air crackled, not with ozone, but something else, something ancient and raw. The meteor, a molten fist of space-borne rock, hadn't struck the canyon floor. Instead, a shimmering, invisible dome had sprung into existence, deflecting the celestial body skyward. Koreth's ship, caught in the backlash of deflected energy, bucked violently. Alarms blared, red lights strobing across his reptilian face. "Report," he snarled, his voice raspy. "Shields at 40%, Commander. Navigation systems offline. We are losing altitude." Koreth slammed a fist against the console, the metal groaning under the impact. Retreat was necessary, but the image of the glowing canyon was burned into his mind. Below, in the canyon, the rock face pulsed with an inner light. Veins of the strange mineral, previously dull and lifeless, now throbbed with bioluminescent energy. The air shimmered, distorting the very light. Small pebbles began to levitate, dancing in the air as if caught in an invisible current. Zara stared, her mandibles agape. Her tactical training warred with the primal awe that gripped her. What is happening?" She breathed, her voice barely audible above the escalating hum emanating from the canyon. Joshua, his eyes wide and unfocused, swayed slightly. "It's awake," he murmured, his voice a strange echo of Zyler's infrasonic rumble. "The mineral, it's a key. It's awakened something." Koreth, orbiting at a safe distance, activated his long-range scanners. The readings spiked off the charts. "Incredible," he hissed, his reptilian eyes gleaming with avarice. "An energy source of unimaginable power. This changes everything." Zara, attempting to regain control, barked an order. "Communications, get me high command. Static, nothing but static." She tried again, her frustration mounting. "Damn it, what's the problem?" "Interference, Commander," a comms officer reported, his fingers flying across the console. "Extreme levels, I can't break through." Joshua gasped, clutching his head. Images flooded his mind. Towering trees with shimmering leaves, crystal-clear rivers teeming with life, skies filled with winged creatures unlike anything he had ever seen. Then a slow, creeping darkness choking the life out of everything. "A sickness," he moaned, his voice strained. "A great sickness is coming." The canyon throbbed with light and energy. Zara watched Joshua, her brow furrowed. The soldier next to her, Vark, shifted uneasily. "Commander," he said, his voice low, "with all due respect, this is getting out of hand. Are we sure we can trust this?" "Human, this all started when he arrived." Zara's mandibles clicked softly, a sign of inner turmoil. Doubt, cold and unwelcome, seeped into her mind. Was Vark right? Was she being manipulated? Above, Korath transmitted a coded message. His target, someone within the Draconis High Command. The message, information about the canyon's energy source in exchange for the human child. Joshua collapsed, his body racked with tremors. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He mumbled incoherently. The heart is broken. The blood is poisoned. Zara whirled on her comms officer. Report. Commander, I've isolated the source of the interference. It's internal, coming from within our team. Betrayal. The realization hit Zara like a physical blow. She scanned the faces of her soldiers, her eyes narrowed. Who? She demanded, her voice dangerously low. Vark stepped forward, his face grim. It's for the best, Commander. He's a threat, Korath promised us. Safety, a future away from this cursed planet. He lunged for Joshua, a vibro blade flashing in his hand. Zara reacted instantly, throwing herself in front of the child. The blade pierced her side, a searing pain ripping through her. Zara staggered, clutching the wound. Blood seeped between her fingers. Joshua, she gasped, her vision blurring. Help Xyler, understand, the energy. Joshua, his eyes snapping open, reached out, his hand trembling. He touched the pulsating mineral. A surge of energy coursed through him, amplified by the mineral's power. Xyler's voice, clear and strong, echoed in his mind. The heart is broken, Joshua repeated, his voice resonating with an alien timbre. The blood is poisoned. Only balance can heal. Zara, her strength failing, looked at Joshua, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. What does it mean? She whispered before darkness claimed her. The medic, a Draconis with scales the color of polished obsidian, finished his examination, his multifaceted eyes grim. Her life signs are unstable. The energy discharge has caused significant neural trauma. She requires advanced medical care we cannot provide here. Joshua, his brow furrowed, felt a pang of something akin to sorrow emanating from Xyler. It was a deep, resonant vibration that resonated in his very bones. Distress, raw animal fear for Zara. We have to get her to the main facility, Joshua insisted, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. The one near the capital. A low murmur rippled through the remaining soldiers. Doubts, fears, hardened by the recent betrayal and the unsettling effects of the canyon's energy field. Trust him. One muttered, his voice filled with suspicion. After what happened, Joshua ignored them. He reached out, gently taking Zara's hand. A jolt, not painful, but information. An image flooded his mind. Clear, cool water, the metallic tang of Draconis minerals, the way the sunlight used to filter through the leaves of a now-dead tree. A well. Xyler. Joshua stammered, his eyes wide. He says, the water. Something's wrong with the water. It wasn't always like this. The trader, barely conscious, his breathing ragged, rasped, don't listen to him. Always. Bad. His words were weak, but the seed of doubt was planted. A high-pitched whine filled the air, growing in intensity. Another meteor shower, but this one was different. The streaks of light were sharper, crackling with visible electricity. The air itself seemed to vibrate with nearly unleashed energy. Before anyone could react, Korath's voice boomed from the canyon rim. The game ends now. Energy blasts rained down, targeting their exposed position. The meteor shower provided a deadly screen, making it impossible to pinpoint the source of the attack. One of the Draconis soldiers cried out, clutching his side. A smoking hole marked where an energy blast had struck. His armor sputtered, malfunctioning wildly, spitting sparks. My systems are failing. The energy, it's overloading everything. He was a liability, a walking beacon for Korath's fire. We have to move. Joshua yelled, his voice barely audible above the din. He reached out, focusing on his connection with Xyler, letting the creature's senses guide him. There are tunnels. Xyler knows a way. He led them, stumbling into the labyrinthine network of tunnels that riddled the canyon walls. The air grew thick with the smell of ozone and damp rock. Deeper and deeper they went, the meteor shower a distant rumble above. Another vision slammed into Joshua, unbidden, overwhelming. This time it wasn't water. It was earth. A specific mineral, a deep crimson hue, almost metallic in its intensity. A deposit now depleted, leaving a gaping hole in the rock. There's something missing. Joshua gasped, clutching his head. A mineral, it's gone. It needs to be replaced. Minerals. One of the soldiers scoffed, his voice filled with disbelief. What are you talking about, human? We have more pressing concerns. A deafening explosion rocked the tunnel. Korath's forces had breached the entrance. The tunnel mouth glowed with the eerie light of energy weapons. They were trapped. Then a sound, a roar. Not just a roar, but a primal, earth-shattering bellow that vibrated through the very stone around them. The ground trembled. A section of the tunnel ceiling collapsed, showering them with rock and dust. When the dust settled, Joshua was alone, separated from the Draconis soldiers, cut off from Korath's forces, deeper in the tunnels than before. He could still feel Xyler's presence, a guiding beacon in the darkness, but the urgency, the need to find that missing mineral, was growing stronger with each passing second. A figure emerged from the shadows, blocking his path. Korath. His eyes gleamed with cold triumph. You, Korath hissed, his voice low and menacing. You are the key, human, the key to unlocking the power of this canyon. I know you can sense it. The mineral power source, and I will have it, regardless of the cost. Where is it, boy? Korath snarled, his grip tightening on Joshua's arm. The rough scales of the Draconis' hand dug into his skin. The mineral deposit, tell me now. Joshua swallowed, his throat dry. The air in the tunnel was thick with the smell of damp earth and something metallic like old blood. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, trying to sound more scared than he actually was. A jolt, not quite a sound, not quite a feeling, pulsed through his mind. A fleeting image, jagged rocks, splintered timbers, the oppressive weight of stone. Unstable, ahead, Korath shook him roughly. Don't play games with me, human. Zara told you. Where is it? Joshua squeezed his eyes shut, trying to focus. I think I remember something, he said, his voice trembling. But it's further back, near the main chamber. Korath hesitated, suspicion etched on his reptilian face. Lead the way and don't try anything foolish. He shoved Joshua forward, deeper into the tunnel. Back in the main chamber, the remaining Draconis soldiers were locked in a heated debate. We need to get Zara to safety, one of them argued, his voice imbued with fear. She's our priority. But what about the boy? Another countered. We can't just leave him to Korath. He's human, the first soldier spat. He's not one of us. Zara wouldn't leave him, a third voice, quieter but firmer, cut through the argument. It was Jax, the soldier who had initially helped Korath capture Zara. Guilt gnawed at him, a constant, sickening reminder of his betrayal. I'm going after him. Are you crazy? The first soldier exclaimed. That's suicide. Jax ignored him, already turning towards the tunnel. I'm not going the way they went, he muttered to himself. Too obvious. He spotted a smaller, less used passage branching off from the main chamber. This has to be the way. With a grunt, Jax activated his wrist-mounted cutting tool and cut through the metal support. The tunnel supports groaned. Joshua shuffled forward, Korath's grip still tight. The tunnel narrowed, the air growing colder. The vision flashed again, stronger this time. He could almost feel the vibrations of the shifting rock. He knew what he had to do. Wait, Joshua said suddenly, stopping in his tracks. I remember now, it's not this way, it's over there. He pointed to a side passage, his voice filled with newfound confidence. Korath frowned, his eyes narrowed. Are you sure, boy? Yes, Joshua insisted. I'm sure, it's just around that corner. As Korath rounded the corner, Joshua shoved him with all his might, sending the Draconis stumbling forward into the darkness. A deafening roar filled the tunnel, followed by the sickening crunch of collapsing rock. Dust exploded outwards, choking the air. Joshua threw himself backwards, shielding his face with his arms. When the dust began to settle, he scrambled to his feet. The tunnel behind him was blocked by a solid wall of rubble. "Korath," he shouted, his voice barely audible above the groaning of the earth. A muffled reply echoed from the other side of the collapse. Korath was alive but trapped. Panic clawed at Joshua's throat. He was alone. The path back to the Draconis soldiers was gone. He had no choice but to go forward, deeper into the unknown. Then a clearer vision flooded his mind. A map etched in light overlaid on his senses. He saw the twisting tunnels, the location of the mineral deposit marked with a pulsing beacon, and beneath it, a hidden source of water. He ran, guided by the vision, his heart pounding in his chest. The tunnels twisted and turned, leading him through a labyrinth of rock and shadow. Finally, he emerged into a vast cavern. Before him lay an ancient Draconis mining site abandoned long ago. Decaying structures clung to the cavern walls, remnants of a forgotten era. In the center of the cavern, a massive well yawned open, its depths swallowed by darkness. It was bone dry. Back in the main chamber, Zara coughed, her breath rattling in her chest. The Draconis soldiers exchanged worried glances. "We have to get her help," one of them said. "I'm sending a distress signal." The signal pulsed outwards, piercing the darkness of Xylos, but it didn't reach the intended recipients. Instead, it was intercepted by a small, heavily armed patrol led by one of Korath's loyalists. Well, the leader of the patrol sneered. "Looks like our little bird has flown the coop, and she's taken the human with her. Time to bring them home." Joshua ignored the cold, the damp, the fear that gnawed at him. He focused on the broken machinery scattered around the mining site. Gears, pipes, and wires lay in tangled heaps, victims of time and neglect. He picked up a rusted wrench, his fingers tracing the contours of the ancient tool. An idea sparked in his mind. This equipment. It could be used to extract water. He worked feverishly, his small hands moving with surprising speed and dexterity. He reconnected pipes, tightened bolts, and rerouted wires, guided by a combination of instinct and the faint memories embedded in the ancient technology. Finally, with a groan of protesting metal, the machine sputtered to life. A trickle of water gurgled from the end of a pipe, then a steady stream. Clear, cold water, drawn from deep within the planet. He could not bring up the mineral himself. But he had the water. A deafening roar echoed through the tunnels, shaking the very ground beneath his feet. It was Xylar, and it was close. Joshua realized with a sudden surge of understanding that they would have to get the water to the mineral. Xylar lumbered into the mining site, his massive form casting a shadow that swallowed the already dim cavern, but he was too large. His scaled flanks scraped against the entrance, rock dust raining down as he tested the limits of the opening. Joshua felt a pang of frustration. He'd hoped Xylar could directly help move the water, but the cave was simply too small. His gaze swept over Xylar, searching, assessing. Not brute strength, then. What else could he offer? His eyes locked onto Xylar's head, the ridges above his eyes, the way he seemed to sense everything around him. "Xylar, I need you to scout," Joshua projected the thought, focusing his intent. "Look for trouble, anything coming our way." A low rumble vibrated through Joshua, a confirmation. Then a jolt, sharper this time, accompanied by a surge of urgency from Xylar. "Ships, coming fast." Ships? Joshua's stomach dropped. How many? The image flashed in his mind, 3 Draconis cruisers, engines blazing, far too close for a standard rescue. Korath, it had to be Korath. He spat a curse under his breath. They'd intercepted the distress signal. A ragged wheeze cut through the air. Joshua whirled around. Zara's breathing was labored, each inhale a desperate gasp. The lights on her life support flickered erratically, casting dancing shadows on the cavern walls. "Her systems are failing, Commander," one of the Draconis soldiers reported, his voice tight with panic. "We can't stabilize her." Joshua's mind raced. Zara was dying. Korath was coming. He had maybe minutes. He had to act, and act now. He took a deep breath. He needed a diversion, something big, something loud, something that would draw Korath's attention away from the cave. He looked at Xyler. "I need your help, old friend," Joshua sent the thought, projecting the image of the incoming ships, the desperation in Zara's rasping breaths. "I need you to make a lot of noise. Distract them. Can you do that?" A wave of understanding washed over him, followed by a surge of raw power. Xyler understood. "Get Zara ready for transport," Joshua barked at the soldiers. "Now, we need to get her out of here." He grabbed the nearest container of water, straining under its weight. He had to get it closer to the opening. Xyler threw back his massive head and unleashed a roar that shook the very foundations of the mountain. The sound was a physical force, a wave of pressure that slammed into Joshua, momentarily stealing his breath. The cavern echoed with the earth-shattering cry. Almost instantly, the calm crackled to life. "Vessels rerouting," a soldier reported, his voice tight with disbelief. "They're heading towards the source of the disturbance." Joshua staggered towards the cave opening, dragging the container of water behind him. As he reached the edge, he saw them Korath's ships, descending like predatory birds, weapons charging. On the ground, Korath's soldiers were already deploying, energy rifles raised, engaging Xyler in a chaotic dance of death. Blaster fire illuminated the scene in flashes of blinding light. Ignoring the immediate danger, Joshua heaved the container and poured the water onto the parched earth just outside the cave. He and Xyler both felt it, a subtle shift, a faint pulse of life returning to the soil. It was working. Suddenly, a barrage of energy blasts slammed into the rock face beside him, showering him with sparks and debris. Korath's soldiers were focusing their fire on the cave entrance. They knew he was here. Inside the cave, the flickering lights on Zara's life support sputtered and died. The rasping breath ceased. The monitors went flat. Joshua pressed his hand against Zara's cold skin, his own trembling. Her eyes were vacant, her breathing non-existent. He couldn't accept it. Closing his eyes, he reached out, not with his hand but with his mind, a desperate tendril of thought stretching towards Xyler. He focused on Zara, on the faint spark of life that still clung to her, visualizing the intricate network of veins beneath her skin, her connection to the very soil of Xylos. He remembered Zara, weeks ago, pointing to a patch of vibrant, luminescent moss. Xylos. It has ways of healing its own, Joshua. A deep connection. Something we've almost forgotten. He clung to those words, a lifeline in the face of despair. He believed he had to believe that Xyler could somehow activate that dormant healing. Xyler, sensing Joshua's anguish, the raw, untamed grief that pulsed between them, lowered its massive head. A low rumble emanated from its chest, growing in intensity until it became a concentrated pulse of infrasound, aimed not at Zara, but downwards towards the very core of the planet. The air shimmered, and a strange pressure built in Joshua's ears. The ground beneath them began to tremble, not the tremors of the Draconis bombardment, but something deeper, more primal. Korath's soldiers, momentarily forgetting their orders, stumbled, their weapons clattering against the cave floor. Confusion etched itself onto their faces. A surge of energy, raw and untamed, flowed through Zara's body. Her back arched, her eyes snapped open, and she coughed, a ragged, desperate sound that echoed through the cavern. She gasped for air, her chest heaving. Zara was alive but weakened, her skin clammy. "Joshua," she croaked, her voice barely a whisper. "We need to move," he said, pulling her upright. Outside, chaos reigned. The water Joshua had poured earlier, a desperate attempt to create a distraction, had attracted the attention of Xylos's less savory denizens. Razorwings screeched and tore at the soldiers, their bioluminescent bodies flashing in the dim light. Acid-spitting grubs erupted from the ground, dissolving armor with terrifying ease. Korath, his face contorted with rage, bellowed over the din. "Secure the entrance. Eliminate the human and the traitor." But Xyler stood between them and the cave entrance, a living mountain of scales and muscle. With a roar that shook the very foundations of the mine, it lunged forward, scattering the remaining soldiers like ragdolls. Claws ripped, teeth tore, and the cavern floor ran red. Above, the Draconis ships, mistaking Xylar's defense for aggression, intensified their bombardment. Explosions rocked the ground, showering them with debris. Joshua realized what was happening. The vibrations from the explosions, combined with Xylar's infrasound, were causing the minerals surrounding the cave entrance to shift, creating unstable pockets. The whole place was on the verge of collapse. "Xylar," Joshua shouted, his voice barely audible above the explosions. "We need to collapse the entrance. Bury them." Understanding flashed in Xylar's reptilian eyes. It lowered its head, focusing its infrasound on specific points in the rock face, targeting the weak seams and fault lines. The air crackled with energy. With a deafening roar, the cave entrance collapsed, burying Korath's remaining soldiers under tons of rock and sealing them inside. Dust and debris filled the air, choking Joshua and Zara. When the dust finally settled, they were trapped. Trapped inside the mine, with Xylar, an unknown amount of resources, and a very uncertain future. But even as the realization of their predicament sank in, Joshua felt a new tremor, deeper and more unsettling than anything he had felt before. It wasn't the Draconis bombardment, and it wasn't Xylar's infrasound. It was something else entirely, something ancient and powerful, awakened by the very vibrations that had saved Zara's life. The mine began to shake more violently than before, the very rock groaning under an unseen pressure. The groaning of the mine intensified, a low, guttural sound that vibrated through the soles of Zara's boots. Dust rained down from the ceiling, stinging her eyes and coating her armor in a fine layer of gray. "We don't have much time," she shouted over the din, her voice tight with urgency. "The structural integrity is failing rapidly." Joshua, his brow furrowed in concentration, reached out, his hand hovering inches from the rough-hewn wall. "It's a resonance," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Like Xylar, but bigger, stronger. It's like the whole mountain is singing." Xylar, sensing the increased instability, emitted a series of rapid infrasonic pulses. Zara, her translator struggling to keep up, watched the readings flicker across her wrist-mounted display. "He's mapping the tunnels," she said, relief flickering across her face. "Identifying the most stable pathways. Clever." Zara consulted the data streaming from Xylar, overlaying it onto the mine's geological schematics on her gauntlet display. Her fingers danced across the screen, highlighting stress fractures and potential collapse zones. "If we follow Xylar's path," she said, pointing to a highlighted route that veered sharply downwards, "we might be able to find a more stable section of the mine." Joshua tugged at Zara's sleeve, his eyes wide. "There's something down there," he said, pointing into the darkness. "A lot of energy. I can feel it pulling me." Despite the obvious danger, Zara hesitated only for a moment. Joshua's intuition had proven invaluable so far. "All right," she said, her voice firm. "Let's see what's calling to you." As they descended deeper, the tunnel walls began to shimmer with an ethereal glow. Strange, bioluminescent crystals sprouted from the rock, pulsating with a soft, rhythmic light. The air hummed with an almost palpable energy. Zara reached out, carefully touching one of the crystals. It felt warm to the touch, vibrating faintly beneath her fingertips. "Unknown mineral composition," she muttered, running a quick analysis. "Unique to Xylos, my theory. The crystal structure is amplifying infrasound. It would explain the strength and clarity of Xylar's mapping." The deeper they ventured, the more unstable the mine became. Tremors shook the tunnel with increasing frequency and intensity, sending showers of rock and dust cascading from the ceiling. The groaning of the mine grew louder, more insistent, like a living thing in agony. Xylar emitted a low, guttural rumble, a sound that resonated deep in Zara's chest. "Another presence," Zara said, interpreting the infrasound. "Large, subterranean, approaching." The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, the air thick with the smell of ozone and damp earth. In the center of the cavern, a colossal creature stirred. An ancient Xylarian worm, its segmented body thicker than a transport ship, rose from the depths, its massive jaws lined with rows of razor-sharp teeth. The worm thrashed, its movements causing the cavern to tremble. Boulders rained down from the ceiling as it emitted a deafening roar. Xylar recoiled, his infrasound momentarily disrupted by the sheer force of the worm's presence. Joshua cried out, clutching his head. "It's in pain," he gasped, his voice filled with anguish. "It's the planet. Something's wrong with the planet." Closing his eyes, Joshua reached out with his mind, focusing all his empathy on the tormented creature. He imagined soothing colors, cool water, and the vibrant ecosystem of a healthy Xylos. Xylar, sensing Joshua's intent, emitted a series of complex infrasonic pulses, relaying Joshua's message of peace and understanding to the agitated worm. The cavern air crackled with the combined power of their communication. The worm stilled, its massive head tilting slightly. Then slowly, deliberately, it focused its gaze on Joshua. A wave of images flooded his mind: parched landscapes, poisoned waterways, and dying flora. The worm showed him the areas that needed minerals to be rebalanced, or it would continue to be agitated. Joshua stumbled back, his eyes wide with revelation. It's showing me," he stammered, turning to Zara. "The planet, it's sick, the worm, it's the key. We have to help it restore the balance." Zara stared at Joshua, then at the colossal worm, then back at the shimmering crystals that lined the cavern walls. Understanding dawned in her eyes. "The crystals," she said, her voice hushed with awe. "They amplified Xylar's signal, allowed him to communicate with the worm, and you understood." Another tremor shook the cavern, sending more rock crashing down around them. New caves were being created. Joshua, eyes still wide, grabbed Zara's arm. "The minerals that fell," he said urgently, "they are making the ground and water purer." Zara didn't hesitate. "Evacuate the mine. All personnel, immediate evacuation. Prioritize Joshua and Xylar's safety." Her voice, amplified by the comm system, cut through the chaos. The tremors, though lessened, still vibrated through her boots, a constant reminder of the unstable ground beneath them. The worm deep within the earth seemed to sigh, a subtle shift in the infrasonic hum that resonated in Joshua's bones. He closed his eyes, his brow furrowed in concentration. The vision was still fragmented, chaotic, but a single point shone through, a location on the surface not far from the mine entrance. "There," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Up there. It's the worst there." Zara accessed the Draconis geological surveys on her wrist console, her fingers flying across the interface. The location Joshua indicated flared on the screen, marked in crimson. Her breath hitched. It was the site earmarked for the new hydroponics complex, a massive undertaking designed to increase food production for the growing colony. A cold dread washed over her. The Draconis weren't solving the problem, they were making it worse. The realization was a physical blow, solidifying her trust in Joshua's inexplicable connection to the planet. What kind of minerals, Joshua, and how much? Crystalline, silicates, a lot, more than they're taking out. He struggled to articulate the alien sensation, the worm's desperate plea. "They have to put them back." Zara's mind raced. Crystalline silicates were rare on Xylos, difficult and costly to extract. "We don't have enough readily available. It would take weeks to get a shipment from off-world." An idea, audacious and desperate, formed in her mind. The construction equipment. We could repurpose the construction equipment from the hydroponics site. Use the automated drills and transport drones. But convincing the high command to divert resources from such a crucial project. She tried to raise the high command on her comm, but only static answered. A red error message flashed on the screen. Communication lines severed due to structural damage. Primary relay offline. The mine collapses had taken out more than just tunnels. "We have to go to the surface," Zara said, her voice grim. Override the communication block manually. Xyler shifted, a low rumble vibrating through the cavern. Joshua reached out, touching the scaled hide, his eyes widening. He says, "The worm, it's getting weaker, it can't help much longer." Joshua turned to Zara, his young face etched with worry. "We have to help the worm too, Zara. If it dies..." The route to the surface was a twisted maze of collapsed tunnels and unstable supports. A massive pile of debris blocked their path, tons of rock and twisted metal barring their way. The mining lasers were useless. The pile was too dense, too unstable. Zara stared at the obstruction, frustration building. "We'll never move that by hand." Joshua looked at Xyler, then back at the debris. "Xyler, can you..." He trailed off, unsure how to phrase the request. Xyler seemed to understand. The great beast lowered its head, focusing on the pile. A deep, resonant hum emanated from its throat, an infrasonic vibration that Zara could feel in her teeth. The debris pile shimmered, dust motes dancing in the air as the rock vibrated. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. "Now!" Joshua yelled. Zara didn't hesitate. She activated the mining laser, focusing its beam on the weakened structure. With a groan of protesting metal, the debris field collapsed inward, creating a narrow passage to the surface. They emerged into the harsh Xylo's sunlight, blinking against the glare. The construction site loomed in the distance, a hive of activity, but getting there wouldn't be easy. It was heavily guarded, Draconis security troopers patrolling the perimeter with energy rifles. And then the sandstorm hit. A wall of ochre swept across the landscape, engulfing them in a swirling vortex of sand and wind. Visibility dropped to near zero. The air crackled with static electricity. The fine grit stung Zara's exposed skin. "Damn it," she shouted over the howling wind. "We'll never get through now." But Joshua grabbed her arm, his eyes shining despite the gloom. Maybe it can help us. They won't see us coming." As they crept closer to the construction site, shielded by the swirling sand, they heard voices, distorted by the wind but still audible. Weaponization program. Phase 2, ready to begin trials. Zara froze. The faction. They were using the construction site as a base. The hydroponics project was a cover. Suddenly, a spotlight cut through the storm, bathing them in its harsh glare. A shout rang out. "Intruders, halt!" Zara and Joshua were shoved into the command center, the cold metal of the floor biting through Joshua's thin tunic. Commander Varkos, a towering figure in polished armor, sneered down at them. Zara, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I expected more loyalty from you, but then again, you always did have a soft spot for the vermin." Varkos gestured to a holographic display showing Xyler restrained, its massive form struggling against energy binders. "Soon, this beast will be the terror of the galaxy. We will crush system after system, and Xylos will be the seat of our new empire." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "The environmental consequences, irrelevant. Power is all that matters." Joshua stepped forward, his small voice surprisingly firm. "You don't understand. Xylos is dying, the Xyler. He's trying to tell you something. If you keep mining the wrong minerals, the tremors will destroy everything." Varkos backhanded Joshua, sending him sprawling. "Silence, child. You are nothing but an insignificant speck in the face of Draconis might." A low, guttural rumble filled the chamber. Xyler, sensing Joshua's pain, unleashed a powerful burst of infrasound. The lights flickered, consoles sparked, and a section of the cave ceiling collapsed, showering the room in dust and debris. The Draconis soldiers cried out, clutching their heads in agony. "Seize them!" Varkos roared, but Zara was already moving. She slammed her elbow into the face of the nearest guard, grabbed his pulse rifle, and opened fire, creating a path toward Joshua. "Run, Joshua," to the comms console. Remembering the images Xyler had shown him, Joshua scrambled towards the console, dodging falling rocks and panicked soldiers. He accessed the main comms channel, his fingers flying across the alien interface. The mineral imbalance. Xyler had shown him the specific deposits, the ones that would stabilize the ecosystem. The faction was extracting the wrong ones, actively poisoning the planet. "This is Joshua Baker," he shouted into the comms. "Commander Varkos is destabilizing Xylos. He's mining the wrong minerals. You need to extract." He rattled off the coordinates Xyler had conveyed to him. "Extract those minerals and distribute them evenly. It's the only way to save Xylos." Chaos erupted as loyal Draconis forces, having received Joshua's desperate message, stormed the command center. Blaster fire filled the air as they engaged Varkos' troops. Zara, a whirlwind of fury, fought her way through the melee, her eyes fixed on Varkos. Varkos, realizing his plan was crumbling, attempted to flee, dragging Xyler along with him. "The beast is mine," he screamed. Zara intercepted him, tackling him to the ground. "Xyler belongs to Xylos," she snarled, disarming him. A fierce struggle ensued, Varkos' superior strength matched by Zara's agility and tenacity. Finally, with a well-aimed kick, Zara sent Varkos sprawling, knocking him unconscious. As the fighting subsided, the loyal Draconis forces, led by Commander Thuron, secured the command center. "Begin mineral extraction and distribution immediately," Thuron ordered. "Follow the coordinates provided by the human child." Driven by a renewed sense of purpose, the Draconis forces worked tirelessly, extracting the correct minerals and distributing them across the ravaged landscape. As the minerals were deployed, a tremor ran through the ground, but this time it was different. It was a calming tremor, a release of tension. Deep beneath the surface, the Xylarian worm sensed the change. Its destructive tremors subsided, and a sense of equilibrium returned to the planet. In the holding cell, Xyler's struggling eased. The energy binders flickered and died as the apex predator began to calm. Its breathing deepened, and a low, contented rumble emanated from its chest. The Draconis High Command arrived, their faces etched with disbelief as they witnessed the transformation. The tremors had ceased, the air felt cleaner. The sickly yellow sky was beginning to clear, revealing patches of vibrant blue. "Zara," High Commander Volkov said, his voice filled with awe, "you have saved Xylos. Your bravery and dedication are a credit to the Draconis people." He paused, glancing at Joshua. "And you, child. You have shown us that even the smallest among us can make the greatest difference." Volkov turned to Zara. "Effective immediately, you are appointed as the leader of the Xylos colony. Your primary focus will be environmental sustainability and the peaceful coexistence of all species." A cheer erupted from the Draconis forces. Zara, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, stood tall, her eyes shining with dedication. She would not fail them. A grand celebration was held, uniting humans, Draconis, and Xyler in a shared sense of hope. Joshua, perched on Xyler's massive head, waved to the cheering crowds. The bond between them was undeniable, a symbol of the new era of cooperation. In the days that followed, Joshua began teaching other humans how to communicate with animals, sharing his gift of empathy. Zara, with Joshua's help deciphering the infrasound, started learning to communicate with Xyler, understanding its needs and concerns. The Draconis began to see Xylos not as a resource to be exploited, but as a delicate ecosystem to be protected. They learned to live in harmony with the planet, respecting its power and its beauty. And so, on the once troubled world of Xylos, a new chapter began. A chapter of understanding, cooperation, and respect, all thanks to the courage of a Draconis leader and the boundless empathy of a human child who dared to befriend the apex predator. The unlikely alliance had not only saved a planet, but had shown the galaxy what was possible when different species came together with open hearts and minds.